And people don't realize how big real estate is around the world. It's like the 2008 crash kind of started with real estate in US as well. That what is the value of real estate in US, like residential? It's something around like 44 trillion or something crazy. It's much bigger than US economy. So that's why. And even China is facing the same issues now with when it goes with real estate. Real estate is a very, very big asset class that people don't realize how big it is and how important it is and how many people work in that.
Sort of, the ultimate scarcity, the ultimate physical scarcity.
Yes.
And I mean, here we have record high concentration in the cities here in New Zealand. Large proportion of the population live in cities compared to the rural. I don't know what the spread is, but it's
it
much
is
higher.
Something like 87% around in New Zealand. So just, when you take Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and that's like majority of the population.
Right. Anywhere with the international airport, that's it.
Yes, airports, yeah. So if you look at historically, all the cities, the global cities or the large cities in the world for the last 2,000 years, they were all ports. So it doesn't matter, whether it is Singapore, Hong Kong, London, any large city you see in the world, it used to be a port back. So because that's where how you do trade and commerce, and that city gets rich. And the ports of the modern day are the airports. So it's like you just say, I do go to Dubai often. I spent 2 months there end of last year, and then their growth has been insane, and it's been led by an airport that has 100 million people a year passing through that. And Dubai is pretty small. I mean, it's growing really rapidly. And they have a vision to grow it really, really even more faster, which is insane, which we cannot build or do anything in Western countries anymore. It used to happen back in 1920s or earlier. We used to grow Western cities.
In the early boom days.
In the early boom days and stuff. And New York was built, Chicago was built, all those. But we no longer can build anymore in the Western countries, whereas they have like a massive, massive vision. In Middle East, that's what the difference I see. We don't have a vision anymore. We have very, very conservative vision. And also we spend more on consultants than actual doing the work than actual building. Yeah. So we've lost that ability to build. It's like first time I went to Dubai was 2008 or 9. And at that time, Dubai's population was 1.7 million, which is about similar to Auckland. And now Dubai's population is around 3.5 million, and they by 2030 or something like that, they want to grow it to 8 million. Okay. So it is a rapid growth. The locals only comprise 8-9% of the population.
I mean, they have these huge ambitious projects that sort of you see the brochure for on social media and things like this, things they want to build, right?
Yeah, but they have already built. A lot of them are built. Like, like 40 years ago, it was just a small village, backtown village of like, I don't know, 30, 40,000. Yeah. I don't know how many thousand people, and now they have an airport that has become a hub for a lot of the world, that 100 million people pass through it every day. And then they are building another airport that will have the capacity of 250 million people a year to travel through.
To transit,
To transit through. So it does, no one does anyone, like in New Zealand, no one has a vision to build for the future, or in all Western countries. It's just, it is very, very different.
So what type of activities are you seeing happening in Dubai? Particularly anything with the Web3 space?
Oh, massive opportunity. So they are bringing in regulation, they're regulating the space. So then corporates and enterprise can interact with it. They see this as an opportunity to take lead because when it comes to fintech and the finance industry, there are existing centers like New York is and London is, and then Singapore and Hong Kong came later on that scene. And it is very hard to dislodge a competitor in an existing industry. But if it is a new industry that is starting, you can build and create an ecosystem for it, and get a heads up against other competing cities for the same. So what do cities compete for? Cities, or at global stage, compete for talent, the best talent. Dubai's made it really, really easy to immigrate for anyone. Pretty much, anyone can immigrate very easily. That's how they
Like
grow.
talent or no talent?
Yeah, talent or no talent. Yeah, basically, if you have no talent, then you learn very less. If you have extreme talent or extremely skilled and network, then you can earn infinite amount. So whereas try immigrating to US from, say, Egypt or Philippines or India,
Right.
it will be very, very difficult legally. I don't mean crossing the border, legally, or US or Australia or any other developed country. It will be very challenging to do that. Whereas to move to somewhere like Dubai, you could get it there within without any effort, without spending much money.
Right.
And so they are the talent hubs, and that's how it used to be. It's like whether it was the old school Athens or Baghdad or Constantinople or Istanbul, or like back in those days, those cities were the hubs for talent, because that's where all the most educated and the most skilled people could go exchange ideas and build things together. And that's what global cities do, whether it's Singapore or Dubai or any. They become hubs for talent, and US was the hub for talent for a very long, a part of the last 100 years, whether it was after Second World War or after any big major event, it would attract the best talent in the world. So that's why if you look at all the companies started, or the Fortune 500 companies started, how many have been started by immigrants or the children of immigrants? Because it attracted the highest quality immigrants, whereas it's slowly not being that place.
I mean, they've had a tremendous run if you talk about America.
Oh, absolutely. And it is still having tremendous run, and it still leads the world in few different things. But it is people or other city or other states or the city states have seen that, okay, this model can be replicated. There are only two things that you need to build a really, really good or three things actually need to build a really good company, country, city. One is high quality talent. So the quality of talent matters. And so you either educate them yourself, and spend 20 years as a country or as a company
From childhood
and take that expense, or you just let them immigrate to your country and don't worry about supporting them the first 20 years of your life. Let some other country do that work and just get them in. And that's what Canada has
pithy,
done.
but it's true. Yeah,
it is true. And that's what US has done, an HB1 visa. And that's why if you look at like any of the companies, like whether it's Google or Facebook, and see how many engineers work there that are from South Asia or like Nigeria or Philippines or Vietnam, and so on. So that's one of the, for talent is the first pillar. The second one is, out of the three pillars, the second one is capital. And US has been extremely lucky that it has had access to capital because of the strength of US dollar and the strength of its finance industry. It has had access to the most amount of capital, whether it was VC funding. Even now, if like startups who start in New Zealand, they are extremely poorly funded, they are very underfunded, so they don't get many shots on the field. If they make a mistake, they cannot pivot and start again. Whereas
you mean if they get New Zealand funding?
Yeah, if they get New Zealand funding. Whereas in US, they have a much more funding. So if you make a mistake, you are allowed to make a mistake, pivot, and start again, because you have so much more runway that you can do that. Whereas in New Zealand, it is much harder to do that. And so that's why it will always be harder for New Zealand companies to compete against US-based startups, and then or even European companies or Asian companies to compete, because no one has as much capital or access to capital at the cost as well. Because yes, African countries can borrow as well, but the cost they pay or the interest they pay is much, much higher. So access to capital is huge. And then the third thing is access to market, and that is something that the Asian or Middle East or North African or Sub-Saharan African companies can compete, because they all have, or Southeast Asian companies, because they all have access to a huge market. Whereas in New Zealand, we don't have access to huge market.
Right.
So that is a major drawback. It's like, if you look at any of the